Greetings! Now, I don't know if you have noticed this, but most modern Disney movies aren't that good. But every once in a while, the company drops a masterpiece beyond our imaginations. Okay, maybe once in a while is too generous. It's more like once in a blue moon. And usually that movie is from Pixar and not Walt Disney Animation Studios, who is kind of the main subject of this video that I'm making right now. Like, why is Walt Disney Animation Studios just so not good these days? And how come, if they're so consistently not good these days, do they accidentally make a movie as good as Encanto? At this point, I'm pretty certain most people are convinced that Disney just accidentally made Encanto as good as it was. Well, it's not an out-and-out masterpiece, like, say, Wreck-It Ralph, which was the last 10 out of 10 rating I've ever given a Walt Disney Animation Studios movie. It's by far the closest they've come to that since. And so I figured I may as well go through exactly why I think Encanto actually works as a movie, whilst modern Disney's other output of animated films just don't. I suppose we should start at the most obvious thing, the characters. Now, of course, all of these movies have protagonists in them, and let me discuss one by one each of these protagonists and why they just aren't that good, except for Mirabel, of course. Now, personally, I'm going to cut off the range of what I call a modern Disney movie, starting at Moana. I could also throw Zootopia in the mix, but that movie's actually mostly pretty good, so I don't see any reason to pick on it. And then there's a year gap between that movie and Big Hero 6, so I figured I'd just leave out those movies that come before, especially when Big Hero 6 is pretty good, minus, a few problems that have been pointed out multiple times by certain YouTubers.
He went in there to save you!
That was his mistake!
And whilst I certainly could say some stuff about Frozen, after that you just hit Wreck-It Ralph, and I'm obviously not going to complain about that movie. So anyways, we're starting with Moana. Now, I know what you're thinking. Moana is a great movie, right? Well, I hate to be the contrarian. Okay, that's not true. I do kind of like being a contrarian sometimes. But I swear it's not on purpose. I don't really like Moana that much as a movie. Like, I have infamously ranted about why I do not like Moana that much as a character back in my Disney Princess ranking video from several years ago now. And I mostly still agree with what I had to say in that video. If you have seen it, be warned. If you watch that video and you like Moana as a character, you will not like what I have to say about her. And whilst I don't intend to go into quite as comical of a rant mode in this video, I will still state some of the problems I have with Moana as a protagonist. First of all, I think the movie poorly sets up Moana as the protagonist in the story. It makes it really hard for me to root for her as a character when the movie makes it so clear that she really wants to go to the ocean and set sail, and that's her biggest dream. But then the movie basically makes up the only way to solve all her problems is to do the very thing she wanted to do in the first place, set sail and go out to the ocean? I mean, there's no tension whatsoever. In order to save us all, Moana, you must do the thing you always wanted to do anyway. You see what I'm saying? Like, I've heard people respond to me on my Disney Princess ranking that she was just trying to save her people. But if that was the case, wouldn't it make more sense to have her personality be basically the exact opposite and be someone who's afraid of the ocean, who doesn't want to go out, but she has to anyway to save her people? I don't know, I just think that would have been a much better character personally.
Well, he's got me there.
And it would have been so easy to change it too, in my opinion. And there's still two other big problems I have with Moana, if you're still listening to this video and not swiftly clicking the dislike button as fast as you could possibly imagine. I think that she's just too self-centered of a character personally. Yeah, sure, Maui is also pretty self-centered for most of the plot, but he actually tries to change for the better at the end. But there's never a point in the movie where Moana is forced to confront her selfish personality. Essentially, by putting her with another selfish character, the movie's using that as an excuse to seemingly make her look less selfish. just so that it doesn't have to tell her she needs to change or be better? I don't know, maybe I'm looking too into this. Maybe you already hate everything that I'm saying. I fully admit that disliking Moana is probably the most unpopular opinion I have ever conceived. But, like, let me just end what I have to say with Moana real quick, and then we'll move on. Because trust me, I have problems with other protagonists too. This isn't just a Moana thing. By the end of the first movie, she still hasn't learned anything or changed as a person. The only thing she seemingly learns is to be herself or some other generic message. But the problem is, because she's acted so selfishly in the plot, that moment in the song where she's like, I am Moana, really ticked me off personally. Because it doesn't sound like she learned that she needs to be herself. It sounds like she learned that she's already perfect as she is and she doesn't need to change anything. Which isn't learning anything at all. Now, I should probably also throw the second movie into the mix here, since she's also the protagonist of that film as well. Now, believe it or not, despite the second movie being critically panned by many people, I actually think it's a better movie by 1 point. Yeah, I don't really like either Moana movie, if I'm being honest. However, I do think Moana is, like, slightly less annoying in this movie, and that's one of the very few reasons why it's very, extremely, slightly, marginally better, in my opinion. Well, except the soundtrack, of course, but more on that when I get to the soundtrack section of this video. But yeah, unfortunately, by the end of Moana 2, spoiler alert, Moana still doesn't really have to face any consequences for, I guess, anything she does. You know, not that she actually does anything particularly, like, that annoying or bad in my opinion, but by the end of the second movie, she basically sacrifices herself to achieve her mission. Oh, but then she just gets resurrected as, like, a demigod now or whatever. So that's what I mean by there's still no consequences. Like, these movies just have too much preferential treatment for Moana, and it's really, really hard to root for her. She's like the exact opposite of an underdog. Now, I may have infamously called her a Mary Sue in my original Disney Princess ranking, but that was probably going a step too far, because she does technically make a few mistakes here and there. But I still think she gets dangerously close to Mary Sue territory, personally. And then we have Ralph Breaks the Internet. Do I even need to discuss why the protagonist sucks in this movie? You know what? I'm not even gonna bother. Just put the Ralph's character traits thing from my Ralph Breaks the Internet video on screen and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Ralph is like literally one of the most despicable people ever in this movie for some reason. I mean, obviously he's gonna be impossible to like. And worse yet, it's a disgrace because he was actually a fantastic character in the first movie. Yeah, anyway, moving on. Frozen 2, I guess. You know, honestly, I don't actually have a ton to say about Frozen 2 here. Neither Anna or Elsa are horrible protagonists in this movie. The movie itself just kind of sucks with its plot. I do think that it's very selfish of Elsa to just completely abandon Arendelle at the end and just go off and do her own thing, which is not very likable. But I really don't have that much negative to say about Anna. She's probably the next best protagonist worth bringing up of everyone that I'm going to talk about in this video. But she's just given nothing to work with in Frozen 2, unfortunately. And then there's Raya. One of the most nothing burger characters I've ever seen. She's supposed to be the hero of this movie that we're supposed to root for, and she has like almost no personality. Like, she's outclassed in the personality department by every single other character in the movie, pretty much. And like, the main growth that she's supposed to have as a character is like learning to trust people, and then she has to trust the villain, because that's the message we gotta learn. Which isn't exactly the greatest message ever. More on that in the themes section. You know who Raya really reminds me of? Merlinus from Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. You see, despite being a significant character in the plot, like Merlinus, all she ever really does is exposition dump and make random comments every now and again, whilst failing to have a significantly interesting personality. Although, to be fair to Raya, at least the other characters in this movie have personalities. Unlike Roy. Rest in peace, Roy. He's still our boy anyway. And then we have Searcher Clade, who I guess is the main character of Strange World. Like, you know, his son and father are also pretty important, but I think Searcher's still technically supposed to be the main focus. I'm pretty certain the movie was actually originally going to be called Searcher Clade before they changed the name to Strange World, so that pretty much proves my point. Anyway, I mean, he's alright, I guess. The thing about Strange World is it's like literally the most mid-movie ever made. And not even ripping off the world of Xenoblade Chronicles can save this movie from being neck deep in mediocrity. There's like nothing special about Strange World, except, I guess, the fairly interesting setting of the movie. But in terms of plot and character, it's just so aggressively average. I kind of like the theme that he's got going with his father and son, but that's, mostly relevant to the theme section of this video. But talking about him as, like, a character and his personality, I suppose he does have at least the fear in him that his son will turn out like his father and not like him or whatever. But he does kind of constantly end up in these arguments all the time throughout the movie. And they do get a little bit tedious to watch sometimes. And, well, I mean, does anyone even care about Searcher Clade? Like, I'm serious. Am I wasting my time trying to explain this character?
Oh, well, if anything exciting happens, wake me up, will you? I was in the middle of a lovely dream.
His best moment is just when he, like, apologizes to his son or whatever for when, for trying to force him to be like him or whatever. But, like, other than that, like, there's nothing that makes him at all anything noteworthy as a Disney character. And by the way, you should totally play Xenoblade Chronicles. It's a very good game. Oh boy, Asha from Wish, the greatest Disney princess of all time. Isn't she so quirky? You'll absolutely love her because she's so adorable.
Yeah, so why'd you say it like that?
Like what?
What are you up to?
Oh, Asha's personality. Disney is trying so hard to get you to like her. But I don't think it quite worked out the way they were hoping. Like, she's less quirky and fun, and more just awkward.
My interview is in 1 hour, and I'm so nervous I think I'm going to explode.
I'm so nervous I'm going to explode.
I have no words, and my mouth's drooping. I feel like it's drooping. Quick, ask me an interview question.
Okay.
Why?
She's a very boring protagonist in reality who has basically no flaws, which is her biggest flaw as a character. That she never actually is challenged in any meaningful way. She's always right from beginning to end of the story, and her only wish is to help people. I mean, the movie just straight up basically tells us she's flawless by saying her only problem is that she cares too much.
I care too much.
Wow.
Like, there's nothing inherently offensively bad about Asha, but there's just nothing for me to care about. It also doesn't help that her songs in the movie kind of suck as well, but that's of course another topic for later in the video. And now, Mirabel, who is not only a real character with an interesting personality, to be fair, she also is a quirky character. But she's a quirky character done right. You see, Mirabel, unlike, say, Moana, has her story set up much better. She's the only person in her family who doesn't have a magic power. Other than relatives who married into the family. And so it automatically puts her into a unique position in the story. She's automatically the underdog because of the fact that she doesn't have a power, and so we want to root for her because we feel that it is intrinsically unfair. On top of that, she's often mistreated by her sister Isabella, and especially her abuela. And so because of this, we want her to prove them wrong. So right off the bat, we already have a character who has a much stronger motivation that we can latch onto. And even though she personally has that quirky personality, she backs it up with other traits. Not to mention the jokes about her being quirky are more funny than the jokes in, like, Wish. I don't think I laughed a single time in that movie. We see Mirabel get sad at points in the story. We see her get excited, happy, empathetic, curious, brave. She's very clearly a fully formed, three-dimensional character. And honestly, she's probably one of my favorite Disney protagonists of any of their films. Her mission to help the family comes both from a personal perspective of, just actually wanting to help her family, and the way that she gets to know each of her family members more as she does this along the way just adds to that. Like, she learns something, unlike Moana, and her relationships with her family members improve, even her abuela, who is very, very hesitant to listen to her, until the climax of the movie, which is very emotional. More on that in the theme section. Listen, I could go on and on about Mirabel, but it's more than just having a good protagonist, of course. You also have to have good side characters and a good villain. But let me just pinpoint a few particular examples of those who do and don't work. Maui is an interesting character, to be fair, but as I kind of pointed out when I was talking about Moana, he can get a little bit frustrating being so selfish at first in the story. But he does learn something by the end, so he may be well deserving of a free pass from my criticisms. Well, except for the pee joke that can go die in a fire. The real problematic side character in Moana is Tamatoa. No, I'm lying. Tamatoa's the best part of the whole movie. The real actual problematic character is the stupid chicken. Oh, and I mean that literally. This character is literally stupid. And I genuinely don't know why so many people find him funny. Like, can anyone explain to me why he suddenly gains brain cells at the end of the movie to save the heart of Te Fiti from falling in the ocean while Moana is rushing towards the island at the end? But he's literally brain dead for the rest of the movie. I smell contrivance. Okay, I admit, some people will probably still find the chicken funny. But you know what I don't think is funny? Kristoff getting super duper ultra sidelined in Frozen 2. Or the fact that Olaf is just a complete and utter idiot in that movie for no reason. Like, sure, he wasn't the smartest dude in the world in the first Frozen movie. But, like, there were actually funny jokes with him in that movie. But, like, he is literally incapable of having good comedy in Frozen 2. Oh, and regarding Olaf, the fake-out death with him at the end of this movie is one of the most insulting things I have ever seen in cinematic history. Like, they have the gall to actually make a genuinely emotionally effective goodbye death scene for Olaf here, essentially, but then just completely undo it at the end anyway. Like, that's what really annoys me here, is if it wasn't undone, it would actually be a really great scene. Like, it would be really moving. And that is why I hate it so much, because it's just pure emotional manipulation of us, the audience, to get us to feel something even though the movie is not willing to commit to it whatsoever. Vanellope is probably more of a protagonist in Ralph Breaks the Internet than a side character, but that doesn't make her suck any less, considering she literally wants to do something in that movie that goes against the lore of the first movie, that you can't go turbo by going to another game that you're not a part of. But that's literally not even brought up in the second movie, because guess what? It would destroy the plot and her entire character arc. Or how about all the various side characters from Raya who are more interesting than Raya herself? Like the chef boy and the bulky guy voiced by Wong from Doctor Strange are both pretty decent characters for the most part, but they get no screen time. And it's clear the main reason that they're in the movie is just so that we can have one person from every country come together. But sadly, due to the fact that the runtime of this movie is not nearly long enough to actually develop all these people in their different countries, none of them end up being fleshed out characters that you truly love by the end. I think Raya and the Last Dragon just tries to do too much with just way too little time. Wait a second, I have a feeling I forgot to mention a certain somebody from this movie that's not completely inoffensive. That's right, everyone's favorite dragon girl. It's the Aquafina character. And she's definitely, most certainly, the most annoying character in the movie.
Look how close my butt is to my head.
And I mean, really, who thought it would be a good idea to get Awkwafina to play the legendary dragon character in an epic fantasy movie? She's just almost incapable of making good jokes. I think maybe the first time I watched the movie, I kind of laughed at the joke about making peace and giving a gift to the villain girl or whatever when they were discussing ideas of what to do. But yeah, other than that, all her jokes suck. See, this is what happens, Disney, when you try to make every single character in the movie some sort of comedic genius. Too many comedians, not enough comedy. And then they try to get all serious with their plot at the end, when the idiot villain girl tries to kill her. Oh, but then she just, comes back to life at the end anyway, so it kind of meant nothing. Strange World side characters. A whole bunch of nobodies I don't care about. The grandpa's probably the most interesting. Jaeger Clade, to be specific. I kind of like that he has to learn to not be completely selfish by the end. But, the scene where he learns that is ridiculous. He stops 2 feet away from being able to see the other side of the mountains and then goes back to help Searcher. I mean, at that point, he may as well just go, 2 minutes longer and then go back for Searcher? There's actually no reason for him to give it up. It's not like he knows that if he doesn't go back immediately, Searcher will die or anything like that. And when Searcher's son, who quite frankly I've already forgotten the name of, even though I just watched the movie, his primary personality trait is that he's not confident and that he wants to become a explorer so that he can gain confidence and supposedly go brag to all his friends, essentially, and impress the person that he's interested in or whatever. But the movie doesn't really sell us on this being a major thing he has to improve, because it's not like any of his friends have any problem with him at the start of the movie. So there's really not many stakes in his character arc. I guess he also likes playing cards or whatever. That's probably the best scene in the whole movie. You know, the one where they joke about how not having a villain is bad writing. You know, that part. The mom, who I also forgot the name of, she also doesn't really have much personality to speak of, I'm afraid. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head, and I just watched the movie once again, just saying, is that she can fly a ship, and she's nice.
Wow! I have no idea how to respond to that.
The side cast of Wish is extraordinarily underwhelming. Like, first up, you have the Seven Dwarf knockoffs, who you might think, oh, that's a cute reference that they've got 7 friends for Asha who are based on the personalities of the 7 dwarfs for the 100th anniversary Disney movie. Except here's the problem. 1, it's too many characters. Considering they actually genuinely try to give these characters a certain level of personality, they just don't have enough time to make us care about any of them, in a similar fashion to Raya and the Last Dragon, but arguably maybe even worse here, especially because of the fact that they are deliberately one-note characters. And unlike the 7 dwarves whom they are based on, they don't have the excuse of being one-note for the sake of comedy. Like, the reason the 7 dwarves work and are so endearing is because they're actually genuinely funny and the jokes are actually good. But nobody in this movie is actually funny. In fact, the comedy in this movie is just really, really underwhelming. Another notable character, of course, is Asha's grandfather or great-grandfather, maybe? Either way, the old guy. You know, that one. And to be fair to the movie, he's probably, arguably, the best character in the movie. Only because there's something to his personality. But he also doesn't have a ton of screen time. And he mostly exists as the motivation for why Asha is doing what she's doing. So his agency is very low, even though he is mostly likable. There's Magnififco's wife, who, like, immediately betrays him the second that he gets possessed by evil and is like, you've gone bad. Never mind that you've been obviously possessed by evil. I'm just going to assume that you were just always a bad person, even though I'm your wife, and I should be the most understanding person who wants to help you.
This is the things you deserve. Hang it on the wall. In the dungeon.
Please, no! The dungeon smells really bad!
Why is she so smug and smirky about her husband being locked in the dungeon? Even though she knows that, like, at least 60% of the reason he did anything was the forbidden magic. Oh, well, he can't be redeemed now, so I guess I'm just gonna hate him, because why not? I'm so loving, aren't I?
Oh, how about Star? You know, the character who's a star that is named Star and has the personality of Star. Literally, there's nothing to this character. It's basically just a Luma from Mario Galaxy, but with only 20% of the personality of a random generic NPC Luma in that game. It's so tragic they have to say goodbye to him at the end. Except for the fact that it's not, because nobody, I repeat, nobody actually cares about this character. And nobody is sad that it has to leave.
Oh, my voice is really high when I cry!
Oh, Valentino.
It's so sad saying goodbye to this star who has so much personality.
There is zero emotional bond created for this climax to work whatsoever here. Oh, and I've been waiting for this moment. Like, who are these people? Why'd they just invent a bunch of randos, throw them on a boat with Moana, and think that we would just fall in love with them? You know, it's the greatest company of all time. A frequently selfish jerk, a Maui fanfic writer, a girl who's just too quirky for her own good, because we needed more quirky female characters, don't you know? We don't have enough hoes! And an old guy. All of whom are supposed to be comedic characters. Because don't you know, having over half your main cast being comedic characters is the best way to write a movie that's technically supposed to be focused on action and adventure? Oh, and like none of them are funny, by the way. Did I mention that?
Yes, it's really simple actually. The motto of motto till the very last breath. There's really only failing than learning than death.
And don't even get me started on the animal sidekicks. I've already mentioned the chicken. And even though I've never been a big Sven fan, he can get a free pass, personally. I don't care enough to rant about him. Or how about the Splat thingy from Strange World? He's a show-don't-tell character because he doesn't actually talk. That must mean you love him, Rockotar.
No, you silly livers! No!
This character was clearly thrown in just to try and sell a bunch of toys. Too bad the movie flopped, Disney. Yeah, this character is unremarkable at best and marginally annoying at worst. Kind of just fitting into that extraordinarily mid zone that Strange World inhabits. And then there's the GOAT. I don't mean the greatest of all time character. No, I mean the GOAT.
It didn't work. When does the magic happen? Ah,
Oh, something's happened.
I'm talking. I am talking. Ah, who knew my voice would be this low?
Why do they have to give the goat a voice? Why? Why?
Ah!
Oh, good find, Valentino.
My butt found it.
He is a disgrace who deserves to go down to the pit.
No.
Anything but la pit.
Bon voyage, losers.
So, believe it or not, when you watch Encanto, the characters are actually good. And not just good, but like genuinely good. Like, we had some passable people in Raya or whatever. But I mean characters who aren't just inoffensive and acceptable, but are actively interesting. Like I mentioned in the bit about Mirabel, her sisters, Luisa and Isabella, both grow as people when they open up about their deeper fears and anxieties, the things that were closing them off and making them act the way they were, a bit more cold and seemingly independent. Except what they really needed was a stronger relationship and understanding. Not to mention they have interesting traits because of their magical powers of being very strong and being able to create flowers and other plant life. Mirabel's mom is also a way better mom than any of the other moms that I've mentioned so far, which may actually just be the mom from Strange World now that I think about it. Though there were other moms in the other movies, I'm sure, right? Asha had a mom, right? I'm kind of blanking, like, she's fading from my mind because if she exists, she had almost no personality worth clinging on to. Anyway, you could see an actual genuine caring bond between Mirabel and her mom here. And it's not in just like one scene, it's throughout the movie. You can see that her mom actually understands her and is trying to help her even though she doesn't fully grasp the entire depth of Mirabel's problems. Her father is also pretty interesting. Like, they had this joke about him getting stung by bees that is oddly used twice in the movie for some reason. But other than that, I like that he shows a similar sense of care for Mirabel, and they don't try to, like, have the mom and dad have some sort of opposing opinions or, like, actually agree. What's that? A not toxic relationship? Unbelievable. And I love the bit where he discovers that Mirabel has found, like, the prophecy of the destruction of their house and family or whatever, and he, like, actually tries to help Mirabel hide it because they know it's going to cause a disaster if anyone else finds out. So I love the chemistry between the two of them during that bit. The cousin who hears everything is also, like, really funny. I mean, what's that? A comedic character who's actually funny? And I love the way that she, like, drops subtle hints about the truth of Bruno and that he's not, like, just some sort of mischief maker who ruins everyone's lives, but that he's seemingly still around and living next to them even though he's not doing anything. And speaking of Bruno, what a fantastic character we have here. Someone who is sort of set up for you to think that he would be the villain of the movie, only to discover that all he did was predict the future, but whenever he predicted that something bad would happen, people disliked him. Say, that sounds familiar. So eventually, he decides that because he still loves his family, that he thinks it's for the best if he just leaves. But he doesn't really truly leave, he just takes himself out of their lives. But he's still there keeping an eye on them because he wants what's best for them. And he wants to be there in case they still need him. And I love that once Mirabel gets in trouble from Abuela after she discovers what she's been up to and all that stuff, Bruno tries to swoop in and take all the credit for everything that went wrong just to protect Mirabel, which is why he hid the prophecy in the first place. And on top of that, he has a pretty interesting, unique personality too. What? A quirky character in my Disney movie that's not a girl? Listen, I could go on. But I think the key point here is that the relationship between the protagonist and the side characters in this movie is the reason why they're all such strong characters. Because they bounce off of each other and add to each other. The connections between their relationships are what make them interesting, not their distinct traits on their own, or being the funniest character you ever saw, or ain't she so quirky? Please relate to her and give us your money. The family in Encanto feels like a real family. They feel like distinct individuals who are still one whole together. And it doesn't have to be a literal family in a story for this same dynamic to work. A group of friends, or even enemies, can still have similar interesting relationships to each other. It's mostly about finding the ways in which these characters relate and differ from each other. Not how much they relate or differ from us, the audience. Oh, and best of all, there's no animal sidekicks in Encanto. And the funniest thing too is there's actually a character in this movie who can talk to animals, and yet there's no animals that talk to us. It's
A miracle.
And now, we shall discuss the villains. Well, I guess in most cases it's more like lack thereof, since so few of the modern Disney movies have proper villains. But let's just go through whatever each movie has for its antagonistic force, at least. Well, in Moana, we have Taka and technically also Tamatoa and the Kakamora pirates or whatever, but they're more minor. And like I said, I kind of do actually like Tamatoa. He's pretty good, and so is his song. But you know what? I can't just let the Kakamora pirates off the hook. Like, this might just be the most pointless scene I have ever seen in a Disney movie ever. Specifically the Kakamora scene in the first movie, not the second movie, since they kind of have a purpose in that one. But like, look at this. Moana, because she's so upset at Maui, decides to just shout at the top of her lungs about how she's got the heart of Te Fiti.
This? The heart? You mean this heart right here? Come and get it!
And I kid you not, in this very same moment, Maui's like, well, what if somebody hears you, and then they might come to try and steal the heart? And literally, moments later, these Kakamora pirates show up.
What?
Were they just sitting around the corner just off screen where we couldn't see them, watching Moana this whole time? If they only found out that she had the heart of Te Fiti because she was just shouting it right now, did they teleport here? Did they go so fast the moment they heard her that they could come up immediately to attack her? And worse, nothing important happens in this entire sequence. Like, the situation is identical before and after these guys attack. Moana, Maui, on a boat with a chicken and the heart of Te Fiti. Nothing changes. The only reason this scene is in the movie at all is just to throw in some action because they realized two dweebs driving a boat to some island is too boring of a concept for a movie. So they threw in this literally pointless action scene where Moana gets to flex how perfect her skills are, of course, just because they knew that we were going to be bored if nothing happened. Like, I genuinely don't know how nobody else that I've ever seen has pointed out the utter pointlessness of the scene. Like, every writing advice video ever will tell you that if there's a scene in your story that doesn't change the characters or the plot in any meaningful way, then you either need to change it or get rid of it. And this is exactly the kind of scene that we're talking about. Oh, and don't even get me started on Ralph Breaks the Internet. You know, I said Ralph was the protagonist of that movie, but he may as well also be the villain, you know, considering his character traits and all that. And especially because, like, the viruses at the end are literally just clones of his negative personality in that movie. And I'm not gonna go into depth about it, you know, like I did in my Ralph Breaks the Internet video, which you can watch if you've not seen it already. But basically, even though there's a interesting idea behind some of this stuff, it is so horrendously poorly executed that it really honestly makes Ralph into quite possibly one of the worst Disney villains of all time. And the worst thing is, too, is that part of the theme of the original movie is that even though Ralph is called a villain, that's just his job, and he's not really a bad guy, but everyone, you know, treats him as a bad person just because of the fact that his job is to play the villain in the game. But oh no, in the second movie, he actually is the villain! This definitely doesn't betray the themes of the first movie at all. So yeah, and then after that, we've got Frozen 2, where the villain of the movie died before the movie even started. Yay. Yeah, this old king guy or whatever who built a dam or some nonsense, and then they gotta break it down. Whoop-de-doo. Something something, magical snow text messages, giant rock monsters. Bada bing, bada boom, Arendelle is almost destroyed, but conveniently saved at the last second. Almost not even worth talking about, quite frankly. And I think the annoying thing here, too, is that Frozen 2 just has this mysterious atmosphere to it the whole time, but it extraordinarily lacks tension because of the fact that everything bad the villain did was in the past, and it's barely relevant for most of the movie until the final third, and then in the final third, all the drama feels super contrived, and it's extremely underwhelming that the solution to the problem is just destroying a dam. Like, it's just so incredibly underwhelming in its entirety.
Namaari has to be one of the stupidest Disney villains of all time. And like, I mean that she is genuinely stupid. Like, nothing she does in this movie makes any sense. Like, ooh, I'm just gonna oppose Raya throughout the entire plot, even though she's trying to save the entire world. And then I'm going to kill Sisu at the end for no apparent reason whatsoever. Even though she's the only one who has the power to save us, and by killing her, I've doomed us all to the villains, including my own nation. Like, seriously, and this is the person the movie expects us to think it's a good idea to trust at the end. More on that in a bit. And also, I can't get over the way she reintroduces herself to Raya after the time skip near the beginning.
What's drippin', Depla?
Like, that's another problem that Raya and the Last Dragon has. Like, it tries, like, way too hard to be, like, modern and cool, even though it's, like, a fantasy epic in concept. Like, there is so much anachronistic language used in this movie that it genuinely is immersion-breaking and takes me out of the experience. Yeah, basically, everything about this character is not very good, and she's easily the weakest part of the entire movie, and that's saying something when Sisu exists. Strange World basically doesn't even have a villain. I mean, it doesn't even hardly have anything that comes close to a villain. Well, unless maybe you count, like, that one girl who's kind of leading the expedition, who I also forgot the name of, because pretty much everyone in this movie is forgettable. And, like, at the end, she's like, no, you can't do the right thing, we need to save our planet. Except that lasts all of, like, 10, 15 minutes, maybe. And then everyone's friends again by the end, so whatever. It's pretty underwhelming. She's an underwhelming character. Her minions are underwhelming. There's that one guy who's supposed to be funny because he's like such a dork and a wimp or something. I don't know, but he's really not that funny. Yeah, honestly, this is the Disney movie that is most guilty of straight up not even having a villain. And it's the one that has the gall to have a joke about not having a villain being bad writing. Did the Disney writers think that this was like gonna be taken as like sarcasm, and they're like, see, you could have a good story without a villain? Jaeger's just an idiot for assuming that. And don't get me wrong, you can have good stories without villains, but it is very, very difficult to do so. You have to have a really strong core theme to your story and a focus that's not on just, you know, action and adventure, which, you know, usually end up being the areas that Disney movies fall into. Plus, I don't understand why Disney has been so allergic to traditional villains recently, especially when many of their most popular movies had such great traditional villains. What's that? Wish actually has a traditional villain in it? Oh, thank goodness, Disney. Wait, no. I take it all back. There's probably a genuine argument to be made that King Magnififco is probably the worst of the villains on this list. Some people seem to think that, like, he was in the right or something for stealing people's wishes, but I don't really buy that perspective. I just think that he's an idiot because his plans make no sense. Try as he might, Chris Pine can't save the writing of this character, who is inconsistent, especially in his motives, and is ultimately one of the biggest wastes of potential that I've ever seen.
Mirrors, mirrors on the wall, who is the handsomest? Me!
Who's the handsomest?
Like, they take what could have been a genuinely interesting character who it seems like they're setting up to be at the beginning of the movie, but then a little bit over halfway through, he just uses the forbidden magic book and turns into generic evil guy number 137. Like, and they have the gall to include that bit about how once you use forbidden magic, you can never go back, to basically say that he's just completely irredeemable, which is such bogus and a complete cop-out from actually giving us a story worth telling, since it basically removes all redemptive aspects of his character at that point, which he genuinely seemed to have at the start, but the fact that he even uses the forbidden magic book in the first place doesn't even make any sense. I mean, why does he even have this magic book?
Embrace forbidden magic just once, and you commit to it for eternity.
Oh, you embrace the forbidden magic once you're committed to it for eternity is like given like no weight to it. Like, oh, Magnifico is just 100% doomed. We're just gonna like make that a 30-second, not even 30, probably like 20-second long clip.
And how come him reading the book to use the magic, like, curses him, but then later when the other characters are reading the book to find out that it's forbidden, nothing happens to them? Inconsistency after inconsistency. And, like,
why is it that all he cares about now is, like, the power? I mean, I'm assuming, of course, it's probably because of the, like, the corruption, right? But, I mean, then you have to ask, why did he want the corrupted power, forbidden magic in the first place? You know, like, I thought his whole point was that he took people's wishes because he genuinely thought that they would make their lives worse by putting them into situations where, you know, they wouldn't be able to achieve their dreams even no matter how hard they tried. Which implies that he, you know, genuinely cared initially, even if his ideas was wrong. So why is his motivation like completely changed now? That he doesn't care about anything except just like, you know, keeping control of the wishes. Like, and of course the only reasoning we're given is that he thinks some wishes are dangerous, which is like ludicrous. Basically, Magnififco is like one of the most illogical characters ever in any Disney movie. I'm just saying.
The way he gets beat at the end, too. It's so pathetic and cheesy and stupid. Where he, despite having literally all the power in the world, is magically defeated in an instant by people singing. The power of friendship. Because Disney, or some such utter nonsense.
Why does his staff suck him in? Explain this to me. He should have just lost his power, not got sucked into his staff for no apparent reason.
Yeah, basically, King Magnififco is not the good. Moana 2 kind of makes you think that it's going to have this one Batgirl be the villain, but then, oh really, she's actually betraying the real villain of the movie, who is off-screen for 99.99999% of the movie, and basically only shows up in an in-credit scene at the end. But otherwise, he only manifests in legends and this storm that they have to face at the end. And so far we don't know enough about him to derive anything more than he is evil. So quite frankly, it's too soon to say anything definitive about this character, but having him be off-screen for so much of the movie is definitely underwhelming. Hopefully, if we're lucky, he'll actually be okay in Moana 3, which is definitely inevitable at this point. I'm not exactly looking forward to it, considering my opinions on the first two, but hey, there's always a chance it'll be good. Not a very high chance, mind you, but 3% is still a chance, you know. And that leads me to Encanto, which kinda also doesn't really have a villain, if I'm being super honest. However, Abuela is close enough to a villain that I'm willing to counter. While she doesn't actively try to do villainous things, she is the biggest antagonistic force since she's so against Mirabel and what she wants, and she just refuses to listen to Mirabel the whole time. And obviously she's the best character out of all the ones I'm mentioning here. The reason she works, and the other ones don't, is that she's given a good reason for why she is the way she is, and she grows as a person. Because, of course, in her past, her family was attacked by, I guess what you could call the true villains of the story, and her husband was lost even though the rest of her family was saved by the miracle. And so because of the time in which these events took place, she sees this miracle as being intrinsically linked to her husband, and that she has a duty to protect this family and the miracle, because they wouldn't have it at all if it weren't for his sacrifice. And so when she sees that Mirabel doesn't get a miraculous power, and there are signs that things may crumble and fall apart, she's unable to see that this is because of the way she is acting, that she's become so stubborn and reluctant to listen, very legalistic in a sense about how things have to work. She has forgotten that the whole reason that they were given the miracle in the first place was so that she could love and protect her family. And it took her losing everything that she was trying so hard to protect, that she had put above her family, in order for her to remember how important her family actually was to her. In a lot of ways, this connects very heavily to the theme of the movie, which is basically the next category I was going to jump into, so, I may as well just swap things around and start with why Encanto's theme works and the other themes more or less don't. You see, the theme of Encanto is that family is more important than other things that we think are important, such as our skills and talents, the home we live in, our position in life, etc. And that we cannot show biases towards certain people over other people just because of what they're capable of doing that other people are not doing. Because all of us are created equal. Even if someone has a certain talent, that doesn't make them better than someone else who doesn't. And also, you can't force people to fall in line with the way that you want them to be. And all of these themes are executed very well, in my opinion. And part of the reason that these themes are so well communicated is via this movie's excellent soundtrack. But I'll come back to that after I discuss the other movie's themes. You see, I have heard many times from many people that Moana has deep
themes. About as deep as a puddle! Sorry, Moana fans, but I just don't get this movie. There's only two possible themes that this movie could have, and neither of them are very impressive to me. As I mentioned, one of them is this idea of being yourself and doing what you want or something, I don't know, which just seems like a very self-centered kind of message to send to people. And don't let anyone tell you what to think, just do what you want to do. And if that really is the message of Moana, then the movie stinks even more than I think it does. But I try not to take the message that, negatively, because I don't think that's exactly what they were trying to send. And if they weren't trying to send that message and they were trying to send some sort of motivational message to people about, you don't have to be what your parents want you to be, then I think they kind of failed that too, because it really doesn't come across very strongly that that was the point of the movie. And the only other possible message could have to do with this whole Heart of Tafiti thing and Taka turning into a lava monster. And if you think that's the deep message of the movie, then honestly, I genuinely don't know what to say. Like, what? She lost her heart and that made her bad. Whoa, such a deep movie. Okay. Moana just feels like a movie that I just don't understand. Maybe I'm an idiot.
Maybe.
But if this movie's trying to convey some sort of deep and meaningful message, then I'm just not seeing it anywhere. Well, at least Moana tried. Well, and then again, Ralph Breaks the Internet also tried to send a message about being clingy and insecure and all that stuff, and it flopped tremendously, even though it actually was a pretty clear message that would have been meaningful if it was executed properly. So I guess I'll take a muddy message that doesn't really come through clearly over a good message that's executed so horribly that it backfires and assassinates the characters it's trying to attach itself to. If you want to hear more about that, once again, Ralph Breaks the Internet video, and link in the description down below. Raya and the Last Dragon actually just straight up has a terrible theme. This idea that everyone needs to trust each other and then we can all live in harmony.
Just to explain, the reason why the theme of this movie fails so much is because of the fact that it wants us to think that before people will trust us, we need to trust them. Which doesn't sound like it would be a bad theme on its own, but it's the specific circumstances in this movie that make the theme fail catastrophically. Because this is a movie where everyone just completely mistrusts everyone for no good reason. And every single time that Sisu or Raya ever trusts anyone, something bad always happens. So why does the movie want us to think that it's a good idea to trust these people? What they needed to do was put scenes in the movie where Sisu is proven right that by trusting somebody, something good happens. But that doesn't happen. Throughout the whole movie, only bad stuff happens when the characters trust people, which just makes Raya look stupid in the end for putting all her trust in Namaari. We've been given zero evidence all the way up to the ending of this movie that Sisu's idea would actually work. Her evidence is literally just, trust me, bro. And that's why it actually can end up being a dangerous message. If you genuinely think that, even after people betray you when you trust them, that you should still just blindly trust them and they'll totally trust you back. It doesn't work like that. You can't just magically make somebody who's completely mistrusting of you and abuses your trust suddenly trust you and treat you fairly. The people in this movie that we're expected to learn a lesson from that we need to trust are exactly the kind of people that you need to be wary about and not trust in real life. It's good to trust people, but trust is a mutual thing. It's kind of like what this movie's trying to say. But if those people have already proven themselves to not be trustworthy, then it's not exactly a mutual thing anymore, is it? Yeah, so anyway, as you could tell, the theme of this movie is not very good. Strange Worlds theme is very obviously this idea of generational trauma and, I guess what you could say bad parenting. The idea of fathers trying to force their sons to be like them. Now, this is actually probably my favorite aspect of Strange World. For a movie that's so aggressively mid, this is the one area that it's actually okay in. I don't actually dislike the theme of this movie, but it is still a little bit undercooked compared to what it could be. Maybe that's just because it's a very basic theme and it's not really explored in any way further than just the father who didn't want to be like his father ultimately does become like him when he tries to force his son to be like himself. Great, that's a good premise. Now where's the extra special sauce on top of that? Oh, what's that? There is none?
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing about Strange World. It's a very predictable movie in terms of its plot and characters. It feels like Disney's trying so hard to subvert our expectations by not having a traditional villain in this movie, only for it to end up being even more generic by not having one, ironically. But hey, at least its theme functions.
The theme of Wish is very wishy-washy. It basically just boils down to, don't try to stop people from believing in their dreams, or else you'll become an evil magical tyrant who wants to destroy the world, or something like that. And you might think, well, it's the Disney 100th anniversary movie. They gotta do something wishy-washy. Okay, fine. I'll grant you that. But it's still executed very poorly. Too little emphasis is put on the actual meaning of these people's wishes, and more just that they have some sort of vague power to them. And interestingly, we're hinted at early on that there could be bad wishes that could lead to someone becoming a bad person if they were fulfilled, but the movie does nothing with that idea, even though that would have been way more interesting than, what we actually got. But instead, it's just something, believe in your dreams or whatever, and ends up feeling really generic and has absolutely no depth to it, and is barely even a focus of the movie. The movie really likes to spend way more time on Asha being quirky or the goat. I also think the movie really fails to demonstrate to us how King Magnififco keeping these people's wishes is genuinely affecting their society. Like, sure, we get a little bit of that with the character of Simon. Hey, he has the same name as me. But even that's just played out really vaguely, because we're never shown what he was like before he lost his wish, and we never really see him dramatically change once he gets his wish. First of all, because he gets possessed by Magnififco for a significant portion of the time after he gets his wish granted, and then at the end he's just apologizing, and that's basically the last we see of him, other than group scenes where everyone's talking at the same time, and so there's nothing for him to show.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Why is it the goat who convicts him?
I could go on and on, but I'd just like to make a wish of my own. I dearly wish that this movie had a way better soundtrack than it actually has.
I can't help it. If mirrors love my face, it's genetics. Yeah, I got these genes from outer space. Keep the name, I'm magnificent. I put the eye and I'm omnipotent.
Wish has by far the worst soundtrack I've ever heard in any Disney movie. I don't think Wish has a single actually good song in it. Every song tries so hard to be a pop song, probably because they were written by pop singers, except none of the songs make sense. Virtually none of them are well integrated into the plot and story, not that there was much plot in the first place, or story, or good characters.
I'm past dipping my toes in, but I'm not past diving in.
The songs feel so out of place. Like they don't feel like songs that the characters would naturally sing. They feel like they're pop songs just inserted into the movie and given to the characters to sing. Unlike most Disney movies with songs where the characters just sort of naturally start singing, and it actually feels like them pouring out their hearts in the moment.
But hey, the song still could have been good. You don't have to have all those things to make great songs, even though it would make your job way easier.
That's a lie, 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 lie.
It's a lie, 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 lie.
But you see, the thing about Wish's songs is that they very often not only use very odd choices of words that sometimes don't even rhyme.
Hey, did I mention when you turn 18, you get to give your wish at a ceremony?
18 and ceremony don't even rhyme.
Wait till they hear our feet go dum 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 dum, yeah.
How is that supposed to rhyme in any way?
But they frequently try to squish 500 million words into a single section of music.
Like, it sounds like these songs are a translation from another language where it's difficult to get it to say the same thing and match the background music. But no, this is the original language. That's what makes it baffling.
Like, listen, I don't know all the proper terms for music. I'm sure there's music experts who could break down why this movie's soundtrack sucks even more than I can. But I'm just telling you, what I'm listening to doesn't sound right.
With lightning for hands and eyes that can glow. No, I'm totally kidding. But he is powerful. He's just like us.
But he is powerful. That's such a bad lyric.
The songs are utterly incapable of being catchy. In fact, some of them are just silly. They actually take away from the atmosphere of the story. Not to mention, many of them are pointless, like the pointless song about how they know the truth about Magnifico. Okay, what does this add to the story? Because they already knew the truth before they were singing the song. They're not convincing anyone who doesn't already know. It's just a song for the sake of having a song. Or how Magnifico's villain song is kind of ridiculous, even though it's probably the best song in the movie, and it's still bad.
Because like I'm saying, it's hard to take him serious when his song is just, this is the thanks I get. Like, it's genuinely comical. How are we supposed to take this guy seriously? Now, we could skip Raya in Strange World because they don't even have songs. Ralph Breaks the Internet, believe it or not, actually does have a song in it, and it's literally one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my entire life. It's a completely nonsensical and stupid song sung by Vanellope as she's dreaming of the life she's always wanted, or should I say dreaming of going turbo. And don't even get me started on that part where the clown just drives up in the middle of the sky or some complete and utter nonsense.
Happy dreams, not creepy clown dreams.
Like, the whole song is just pure nonsense. Like, I get that the joke is supposed to be that Vanellope is such a unusual princess that she's not going to be dreaming and wishing of the usual princess things that the princesses sing of, but it tries too hard to be different and unique that it actually just becomes ridiculous. Frozen 2 has a soundtrack that's more of a mixed bag, personally. Like, everybody I'm sure knows how absolutely atrocious the Olaf song is.
This will all make sense when I am older. Someday I will see that this makes sense.
Like, I'm pretty certain that is the worst Disney song ever made that isn't explicitly racist. But most of the other songs aren't exactly offensively bad. I do think that there are a lot of generic songs. Into the Unknown is decent though, and the Kristoff song actually kinda low-key slaps if I'm being honest. But I think the biggest issue here is that outside of Into the Unknown, very few of the songs like actually have a purpose in the plot. Well, okay, I guess the one that Anna sings, which is pretty underwhelming in my opinion, that they like try to be overly depressing and dark when they were writing it for no apparent reason except they wanted to. Oh no, it's the end of the world! Except never mind, because every single thing that Anna is afraid of is just gonna be completely undone by the end of the movie. Because this is a Disney movie! We don't even understand the meaning of the word consequences! Like, as much as the Kristoff song slaps, it is basically pointless in the grand scheme of the story. I mean, the Olaf song is definitely pointless. The opening song is like one of the most generic opening songs you could ever hear. It feels like it's straight out of a straight-to-DVD sequel movie. Like, it gives off big, you know, Little Mermaid 2 opening vibes. And you know what else is very guilty of that? The opening song in Moana 2 as well. Moana 2 is another movie that has a very underwhelming soundtrack in my opinion. I admit I kind of like the Batgirl Get Lost song, it's alright, but like the rest of the soundtrack, yeah, nice try Disney. Like, especially the Maui song. Like seriously, what were they doing with that one?
Moana, go get your destiny.
Now, you probably noticed I didn't mention the original Moana yet, and that's because it basically does have a pretty good soundtrack. As I mentioned, I like Tamatoa, so naturally, I like Shiny as well, and it is the best song in the movie, easily, in my opinion. Now, Maui's song in this movie is actually pretty good, you know, you're welcome, pretty much everyone knows the song. It's basically a meme. The song at the beginning of the movie, Where You Are, I believe it's called, is also a decent opening song as well. However, I do have some problems with Moana's songs, and I know that's not a popular opinion, but I'm not the agree with all popular opinions guy, you know, so I unfortunately have to disagree. Yes, they're very well written songs, very well composed, very well sung. Dare I say, if you removed it completely from the context of the movie, then it would actually be a pretty good song. However, as I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of Moana's motivation in this movie, so to have her sing a whole song about how she just wants to go to the ocean, which is essentially her just wanting to do something selfish, and ignore anything anyone else says to the contrary, it's not really gonna win me over. Now, this song essentially gets a reprise at the end of the movie, and quite frankly, I like it even less. Because this is the part where she comes to the conclusion that the thing she's been missing this whole time, her greatest character flaw, was that she has not been admitting how perfect she is the whole time. You see, her secret to winning against the villain is that she is Moana. She doesn't need to change or learn a lesson. She just needs to T-pose and assert dominance. Then Tekal will bow at her might. Look at how epic she is when she slow-mo walks towards her at the end. Only Moana could do this because she is Moana! Listen, if the movie was trying to send a message about how you're special just as you are, and that, like, you don't need to change yourself or something, then it catastrophically failed. Because the problem is Moana's, like, good at everything in this movie. If Moana was bad at stuff, or she was afraid she wasn't worthy, like I proposed as an alternate way to start the movie, then this would make a lot more sense as a motivational song, would it not? That she doesn't need to give in to her fears. That the bravery to keep going is deep within who she is. But that's not what happens, and that's why I'm not a fan. Now, in Encanto, as I mentioned a little while ago now at this point, the songs are actually so good. Like, all of them are at least decent. My least favorite's probably the Isabella one. Probably because it is a little bit quick how fast she ends up changing her mind about Mirabel. But it's still a decent song, I'll give it that. But like all the other songs in the movie are great, and they serve a purpose in the plot and add to the themes of the story. The opening song isn't just a generic song, it's used to introduce us to all the characters who are in this movie, because there are a lot of characters. And we could just have them all conveniently walk up and explain themselves, or we could have Mirabel sing about it. Plus, if you listen to the song on the soundtrack later over and over again, it'll help you to remember all the characters, their names, and their powers. So it's actually a clever way to make it easy for people to remember all these characters. But of course, we also have to talk about Mirabel's song, Waiting on a Miracle, which is honestly a fantastic I Want song, you know, the classic songs that tend to be some of the best, when done well at least. My personal favorite being Reflection from Mulan. In Waiting on a Miracle, we see that deep down inside Mirabel, even though she feigns to be satisfied with her life, she feels a deep sense that she is not living up to the standard that people expect her to. It shows us both that she's a bit insecure, even though she tries to hide it, but also that there's a problem in her family, that people have these unrealistic expectations of people, even those who weren't given gifts. And if they weren't given a gift, then they have this idea that there's perhaps something lesser about them, because it's clearly affecting Mirabel, the fact that she doesn't have a gift. And of course, in No Pressure, we learn about Luisa's deeper anxieties, which in a way are similar to Mirabel's, but from her own unique perspective. That because she does have a gift, everyone puts unrealistic expectations on her. Instead of treating her as lesser, they treat her as more than she can even handle. Just because she can do these things doesn't mean that she has to be the only one who's always doing these things and taking no breaks. But because of Abuela, she thinks she has to constantly go like this. The bar has been set so high, ironically, by her own actions, that she feels like if she takes a break, she'll be letting people down. And so it adds a lot to her as a character. And of course, I can't forget to talk about Bruno, or should I say, we don't talk about Bruno. Obviously the most famous song from this movie, the catchiest and probably the best, if I'm being honest. Sorry to be so generic. I'm the generic contrarian, you know. Not only is this song really catchy, but it fills us in on two aspects. One, details about Bruno as a character, but also the way that everyone sees Bruno. It sets up an expectation in our mind of what he'll be like. So when we finally do see him and see that he's so different from what people said, yet simultaneously there was truth in their words, it adds depth to both him as a character and everyone else because of the unique connection they have to each other, and the difference between reality and what people think. Basically, all the songs in Encanto serve a purpose, as well as just being good songs. I mean, that's kind of like how things were back in the Renaissance days. Honestly, if Encanto came out during the Renaissance and was 2D animated, it would fit in perfectly. As a whole, Encanto felt like a movie that was a return to form for Disney, giving us a taste of what they used to be like on a consistent basis. And I think if I had to boil down the entire point of this video and everything I've had to say on every topic, it would essentially come down to this. Encanto works while other modern Disney movies don't because it has depth. Its characters have depth. They aren't shallow. The characters are likable. And even when they're supposed to be antagonistic, they still have interesting aspects to their personalities that show us both good and bad sides to them. The plot and themes have depth. Meaning is hidden throughout every scene in the movie, and no time is wasted on something that isn't important. Encanto has good comedy, but it doesn't try too hard to be funny. Less comedians, better comedy. Write that one down, Disney. The soundtrack has meaning to it. The songs aren't just there to exist and be songs. Each one is intrinsically linked to things that happen in the stories and with the characters. They add depth to the characters, and they add depth to the story and the relationships between the characters. And even though the movie doesn't have a traditional villain in the normal sense, its antagonistic force, and basically the villain of the movie, Abuela, works because she's given a logical backstory that shows us who she is deep down, and her actions make sense on why she chooses to be an antagonist. She's not just pure evil for the sake of being pure evil or anything. She's not a pointless twist villain, not that I have time to get into that, since, quite frankly, that's kind of a thing Disney's mostly left behind at this point. And her redemption at the end makes sense because of how it directly connects to the themes of the story. She's a character with a lot of depth. Depth, depth, depth. Put that in your mind very hard, Disney. The other movies fail because they're too shallow. They focus too much on things that don't matter, or they just fail to develop anything at all. Whereas yet they may even assassinate things that used to be good, like Ralph Breaks the Internet and occasionally Frozen 2 as well. They try too hard to force songs in and force comedy in because they think that's what people want, when what we really want is a good story with good characters and something more meaningful to take with us when we leave the movie. Encanto gives us all of that, and more arguably, since it also gives us pretty good comedy and great songs too. But those aren't the main focus. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I may have gone on a few rambles here and there, but I hope I got the point across, and I dearly hope some people working at Disney managed to see this video as well. Even if you disagree with me on Moana 1, I hope we can still be friends. Anyway, I also gotta give a massive shout out to my patrons who help support me in an extra way, and by the way, they get access to early videos. And all videos on Patreon are ad-free, by the way, too. I wish I could offer more exclusive content, but I do have an extra video that should be dropping on Patreon sometime in the near future as well. That will be an exclusive about how I edit my videos, but I can't promise there's going to be a lot of videos like that.
Well, if you enjoyed this video, then maybe you might enjoy my opinions on some of the other Walt Disney Animation Studios films that are, earlier than these ones. I've got a whole playlist covering stuff like that over here, or perhaps you're a fan of my more negative opinions for whatever reason. I don't know. I've got a whole playlist of rant-related videos over here if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But yeah, most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.